With all the question marks that came with an offseason of upheaval on the offensive side of the ball, losing Davante Adams, with the questions about when Elgton Jenkins and David Bakhtiari would return, and with an offensive performance in week one that certainly had its fits and starts, the Packers offensively through 2 weeks, it has been much the same. The outcomes have been much the same that we have come to expect from the Green Bay Packers. Plus, our friend Lily Zhao, a Victory Wednesday, the first of the season, with Lily Zhao for another edition of Zhao You Doin. That's coming up.
You are Locked On Packers, your daily Green Bay Packers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You were Locked On Packers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm Peter Bukowski, and I cover the Packers for The Leap, a newsletter I would love for you to subscribe to. You can follow me on Twitter, Peter_Bukowski. Follow the podcast on Twitter at Locked On Packers. Like us on Facebook. Subscribe to the podcast, iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts. Wherever you find podcasts, you will find Locked On Packers, the #1 Packers podcast on the internet, and the show for fans who know what happened. They want to know why and how. Lily Zhao is here with us today for Zhao You Doin. Thanks to everyone who makes Locked On Packers your first listen every day. And today's episode brought to you by our friends at LinkedIn. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the candidates you want to talk to faster. Every week, nearly 40 million job seekers hit LinkedIn. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. All right, as I said, we're going to talk to Lily Zhao here in a second. We have some news quickly. Akeem Hicks is going to be out at least a month. That's a massive blow for the Buccaneers defense. We're going to do a crossover tomorrow where we're going to dig into all this stuff. But that's a big blow for a run defense that the last time the Packers played the Buccaneers was just an absolute brick wall with steel beams behind it covered in adamantium. I don't know. It was impossible to run against them. That might not be the case this time around, although Vita Vea still exists, Levante David still exists, Devin White still exists. Also, Mike Evans had his suspension heard yesterday, his appeal heard, and we'll find out, today, tomorrow, the next day, if he can actually go. I'd be pretty surprised at this point if he is not, in fact, suspended, considering this is a repeat offense. And obviously the league felt like Lattimore was not the aggressor in this situation, and Mike Evans did what in the NBA they would basically call leaving the sidelines. He was all the way to the sideline, hadn't left the field, but was all the way to the sideline, came all the way back across, and did the same act that he got suspended for in 2017. So I expect that to happen, but we will get through all of that tomorrow in our crossover edition, talk about how this impacts what's going on with this matchup. And it's making all of this much more interesting, to be sure. And I think in a way it puts more pressure on the Packers. That's something we're going to talk about tomorrow. And then more on the live show. We have a live show coming up on Friday. Different timing, though, on that live show. We are going to go 4:30 Central, 5:30 East on Friday, just because of my schedule. That has to be the time for us to make that work. Before we get to Lily, offensively, you look at week one and you say, mistakes, turnovers. Aaron Rodgers had 2, lost a fumble, didn't lose one all last year. Interception on a play that was totally un Rodgers-like. You drop a touchdown. You turn the ball over on 4th and 1 at the goal line. You turn the ball over in the red zone on 4th and 1. The game could have been a lot different. I think we remember the offense as different than it was in the moment. Part of that is because they got pretty unlucky with pressure. There's some of that in the Bears game too. After going back and rewatching the All-22, Romeo Doubs, man, he had a couple chances to make big plays. Packers couldn't get him the ball. Christian Watson, just every time he goes deep, seems like he's able to create separation. They weren't able to get those big plays to him in this game. The offense is fine. And not just fine without Davante Adams, without David Bakhtiari, and with one game of Elgton Jenkins, with one game of Allen Lazard on a gimpy wheel, with Robert Tonyan working his way back, with 2 rookies trying to find their way in the world. It's not just been fine. If you look at by DVOA, They are 6th in DVOA. 6th. They are ahead of the Buffalo Bills in offensive DVOA, in part because they're a much more balanced team by DVOA. In fact, there are only 3 teams in the league who are top 10 in passing and rushing offensively. The Browns, crazily enough, but they played the Panthers and the Jets. The Eagles and the Packers. Packers are 10th in passing DVOA, 4th in DVOA. For the uninitiated on DVOA, some of you might be new here, defense adjusted value over average. So it is, how did you perform efficiency-wise relative to your schedule, relative to your opponent? But even if you don't adjust for schedule, essentially nothing changes. The Packers are 11th in unadjusted passing value over average and 4th in rushing value over average. They are one of just 5 teams in the league that generates positive value in the run game and has a successful run over 50% of the time. Most teams in the league, when they run, it is a negative play. And I don't mean that like it's a loss of yardage. I mean, from a value standpoint, you are actually hurting your team by running. And in a lot of cases, it's because you can't stay on track. You have too many negative runs, too many 1-yard gains, 2-yard gains, no yard gains, 3-yard gains. Those are not positive plays. They are not helping you stay in front of the sticks. And maybe it also means that you can't score when you get in close. No. And the success rate piece means that they are, when they run, over half of their runs are successful, which means they're getting you, halfway to your down and distance yard. You have a 5-yard run, that's a successful run on 1st and 10. They are overall success rate the number 2 team in the league offensively. Only the Kansas City Chiefs produce successful plays at a higher rate than the Green Bay Packers. Better than Baltimore, better than Buffalo, better than the Buccaneers, better than Miami with Tua and Tyreek and Jalen Waddle playing so well. Better than the Eagles, better than the Vikings, or the Lions, all of a sudden this explosive offense Lions. More consistent play to play. That's with a game of Allen Lazard. That's with no David Bakhtiari. That's with a game of a pretty rusty Elton Jenkins. That's with Josh Myers working back from a major injury. It's with reshuffling and the continuity issues on the offensive line. It's Big Bob Tunyon after not playing for the last 9 months. It's multiple rookies trying to integrate into this offense. It's a free agent receiver who is going to be a big part of this offense. There's a lot of moving pieces, and yet it's about the same. I tweeted this out. It's actually kind of funny. When you look at the Packers by DVOA in 2021, the Packers were 2nd in offense and 22nd in defense. So far this season, the Packers are 6th in offense, 23rd in defense. Defense is basically the same, which I think you can make the case is a bad thing for this team, given the way that last year to this year we thought there would be improvements there, and I think there will continue to be improvements. I think the team that we saw outside of those coverage busts is more the team that we're going to see. And by the way, the success rate, which I think is a crucial stat, bears that out. Top 5 in success rate on defense. When they're not giving up the chunk plays because of coverage busts, they're playing really good down to down defense. That's really good. But the offense, I think, is where a lot of people had more of those questions. And I understand having those questions. I really do. But if this is where this offense is now, think about where it can get to. Think about where it can get to. When you get Christian Watson and Romeo Doubs up to speed, when you get David Bakhtiari back, when Elton Jenkins starts playing a little bit better because he's healthy and he's shaken off the rust, when Aaron Rodgers gets more comfortable with these rookies, When teams start to see, oh my God, this Packers run game is incredible. And then you start to scout tendencies, and we know how good Matt LaFleur is getting off those tendencies. Not just getting off of them, but saying, okay, we know you think this is going to happen. Here's this thing that's going to totally screw that up. Oh, all these RPO screenplays. All right, here's one where it's going to look like the RPO screen. Now you pump it and you go up the field. That's how they hit Romeo Doubs on a big play last week. This offense is going to get better. And the defense, again, I don't think people are that worried about the defense given the talent on this team. Coming in, we knew the talent was going to take a little bit of time. You get Jair Alexander back in there. What is this? Russell Douglas playing a new position. What does that look like? They're going to play a ton of nickel. What does that look like? They're going to play a ton of penny. What does that look like? They're making changes to this defense, to the structure of this defense. It's going to take them some time, and you need that communication. Through 2 games, Preston Smith and Rashawn Gary are the most disruptive edge group in the league. Kenny Clark is the most disruptive interior pass rusher in football in a world in which Aaron Donald also exists. They have the same number of pressures, and Kenny Clark has like half the pass rush reps. It's incredible what he's doing as a pass rusher right now. And by the way, I mentioned the success rate. The Packers are also 3rd in the league on a 3-and-out forcing per drive basis. So only the Eagles and the Colts have forced 3-and-outs at a higher rate than the Packers, and the Colts played the Texans and the Jaguars. The offense is going to be fine. And it's going to be more than fine. This offense is going to be really good because it even on Sunday when you scored 27 points, there were more points on the field to be had. You still had the sloppy snap. Josh Myers snaps it at Christian Watson's feet. You still have Aaron Rodgers a little jumpy in the pocket early, missing some throws, missing some plays. You still have the fumble. So that kind of stuff, if you can clean that stuff up, all of a sudden, you've got an offense that can be as explosive as any offense in the league. And I think, frankly, the number 1 reason, Aaron Rodgers. Number 2 reason, Matt LaFleur. Number 3 reason, this offensive line is good. All right, we're going to get to Lily in just a second. Before we do, let's talk about LinkedIn Jobs. As you gear up for fall, you need the right people on your team to help your small businesses fire on all cylinders. LinkedIn Jobs is here to make it easier to find the people you want to talk to faster and for free. Create a free job post in minutes on LinkedIn Jobs to reach your network and beyond to the world's largest professional network of over 800 million people. Then add your job and the purple hiring frame to your LinkedIn profile and spread the word that you're hiring on your network so they can help you find the right people to hire. Simple tools like screening questions make it easy to focus on the candidates with just the right skills and experience so you can quickly prioritize who you'd like to interview and hire. It's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs number 1 in delivering quality hires versus competitors. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the candidates you want to talk to faster. Did you know every week nearly 40 million job seekers visit LinkedIn? Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnfl. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnfl to post for free. Terms and conditions, of course, do apply. Joining me now for the first time this season following a win, our favorite Lily Zhao here to answer the age-old question. Zhao You Doin?
Peter, it is great. I think, the week is just smells better. Everything's just brighter after a victory. So I'm doing great. How you doing?
I'm good. The sky is bluer. The leaves are the ones that are still green are a little greener, right? It does. Fall smells a certain type of way, and I love it. Fall mornings and fall evenings are just the best.
Yes.
So I'm with you. I'm with you all the way. We need to talk about a win this week. The Packers took care of the Bears, and we'll do some Bears. We'll do some Buccaneers on this one today. There was this, I think, sigh of relief after what happened. That was sort of how I describe it. It's just like, okay, I don't know exactly what to think. And then they come in and they do what they do against the Bears. And you sort of, okay, exhale. The sky is not falling, but they're not ready yet. So did you have a similar experience, or what was your reaction to what we saw on Sunday night?
Especially with how they played in the first half, I thought, okay, this is going to be, they're going to continue to put some points on the board. It's going to be kind of not manageable for the Bears by the fourth quarter. And then the Packers offense got in their own way, fumbled. There's that errant snap. So it's, there were big signs of improvement, but then, this is still a game where they could have been better. And these guys acknowledged it. They said, we didn't play our best game, but we still won. I think they're getting there to playing a clean game. Fortunately, their defense got their first takeaway of the season, and that was great to see as well. I just think they're getting there. They haven't played that complete game yet. Granted, it's only going to be week 3, but I did feel the same way. The sky's not falling. This is still a good football team. They just got in their own way. Once they clean those things up and take care of the football, I mean, the sky's the limit, I think.
Yeah, and you look at the drive chart for them, it's kind of weird because they only punted twice, but they turned it over twice, or they had two of the fumbles. They had the fumble that ends in a turnover, and then they had the fumble that didn't end in the turnover. And so it's just sort of like some of this it's just weirdness. Like, you're going to iron some of this stuff out. Josh Myers snapping it on 1 instead of 2 because Christian Watson is running the jet motion. Like, that stuff is going to get ironed out. Defensively, it's like good news, bad news, right? The good news is the coverage is a lot better than it was in week 1. The bad news is the run defense is still kind of not great. So as we come out of this, which one of those takeaways was more apparent to you in the game? We can talk about which one might be more important moving forward.
I think seeing the secondary tighten up is something that we expected to see. We talked about this DB room being one of the best in the NFL, and they talked about it all off season. And I think we saw that on Sunday night. Granted, it's, Bears don't have a Justin Jefferson type of receiver. However, they were able to keep those guys in check. And I think when you mention the run defense, that's going to be something we're going to have to talk about because they're going to be facing a really good runner on Sunday in Leonard Fournette. So I think they have to really shore that thing up. But I do think how they played in the secondary was super encouraging. And then, again, Jair gets his first pick of the year, first for that DB room. Excited to see what those guys get him because he said it's supposed to be something expensive. So I think secondary playing well was a good sign, but the run defense, not so much.
Yeah, this offense has turned it over 3 times in the first 2 games. And like, that is just not going to be something that I think we see over the course of the season, even without Devontae Adams. Aaron Rodgers losing a fumble in week 1. And it's just like the interception was a boneheaded mistake that we don't see Aaron Rodgers make. That stuff is going to work itself out. I am a little more concerned about their ability to shore up that run defense a little bit. I want to talk to you about Preston Smith and Rashawn Gary because they were awesome in this game. I think this is the best we've ever seen Preston Smith play. Like, if I had told you midway through 2020 that Preston Smith was going to be, like a borderline all pro in 2022 to start the season, what would your reaction have been?
I don't think I would.
Like, what other team is he playing on?
I just think of that, that year where he didn't perform his best, and he even talked about it. I do think that this resurgence of Preston Smith, I mean, he earned his contract last year, comes back, there's high expectations, and he's coming out of the gate flying. I mean, this is really what you wanted to see from a guy who said he wants to be in Green Bay. They extended him, they want him in town, and he's really paying dividends for this defense. I mean, there were a couple plays where I'm like, where did he come from? Like, he just kind of came flying in the backfield, and that's exactly what you want to see from a guy like him. But I think he certainly exceeded expectations. I think for him, it's more of, I knew I could do this. I just had to really show it on the field. So I think I wouldn't be surprised if you had told me maybe a couple of years ago that this could potentially be where he was with the Packers.
Look, it's awesome to see. And they have been the most disruptive edge duo in the league through 2 weeks. They're still playing too many snaps. They don't have any depth behind them. And I think that's something that they're going to have to worry about. But right now, they're playing awesome ball. All right, Lily, time for a vibes check. In Green Bay, this is the home opener. The crowd's going nuts. What is the reaction in the building after a win like this? Is it like, hey, yeah, we're back? Or is it just like, this is what we expected, let's go to work? Like, give me the vibe of the team after this win.
Great question. I think it's more of the latter. I think, again, this is a team that has their sights set on the Super Bowl, so I don't think it's going to be, not saying, the Bears aren't a very, very good opponent for them, and it's a division rival, NFL is blah, blah, blah.
You can say that. It's not a very, very good opponent for them, but division rival.
Yeah, I just don't think that, hey, winning in week 2 at home in their home opener is going to be the, oh my gosh, it's the biggest thing ever. I think this is what they expected. They expected to turn things around, and they got it done. And again, I think if this had been more of a blowout victory, there might have been more of like oh my gosh, blah, blah, blah. But I think it was more of, we got the job done. We got the win. We got back on the right track. We performed a lot better than we did in week one. But again, there's still so many more games left to be played. We won't really hang our hat on this being the best thing that's happened to us so far this season. But the guys, of course, are amped up. That's for sure.
Which is good. You have to be able to enjoy it. It's a long season. This is such a physically and mentally taxing thing on them. You have to be able to enjoy the victories, right? Isn't this also exactly how Matt LaFleur wants to win? I mean, this has been sort of their MO for 3 years. It's, yeah, they win, but they didn't play their best. And it's things for Matt LaFleur to spend the week correcting, and Joe Barry and Adam Stenavich. Like, this is sort of a coach's dream, to beat up a team when you don't play your best, because you feel like, okay, if they play their best game, they can still be really good.
Yeah, and it's certainly, you can have the MO of, let's be like the Buffalo Bills, right? We come out of the gate swinging in week one, we look phenomenal, they look phenomenal in week two. And then there's another approach to it, like you mentioned with the Packers. It's like you're slowly starting out the season. You have young faces on the team. You want to get everybody involved, and there's going to be some growing pains. And again, they had that big time week one. They improved week two, but it wasn't a perfect game. I think with Matt LaFleur, it's steadily getting better every single week, and then hopefully when they actually hit that high, whenever that is, that's when everything just really starts to click on all facets. But again, I think when you're not playing 100% your best, and you can still win, and they should have won, I think, by at least 20 points. But I think when you're winning by that big of a margin and not playing your best game, I think that says a lot about this team and the potential they could have if they do play a complete game.
I'm trying to think. What is the closest they've played to a complete game in the Matt LaFleur era? I'm trying to think of a game where I came out of it going, okay, yes, this is sort of peak this version of this team. I don't know that we've seen it.
I think 2020, when they were just putting points left and right on the board, that was a fun season. But yeah, I can't really think of one where it was
just like both sides kicking ass and taking names,
Yeah, because they didn't really have any sort of big blowouts. There wasn't any sort of like 45-3 victory that they're just kind of dominating in all three phases. And I think the three phases was a big thing, because it was always just one unit was kind of lacking behind, and that was special teams last year. I don't know, just maybe some game in 2020 potentially, because 2021, I think we were talking about, they're good, but they just can't blow these teams out. I
have the answer, and it's a pretty good answer actually. It's that Titans game in 2020. When they won 40-14, and everyone was convinced that run defense was going to get trucked by Derrick Henry, and they not only did they shut Derrick Henry down, I think Darnell Savage had 2 interceptions. They put up 40 points. That's got to be it. And if it's not that one, it's probably that 49ers Thursday night game. They win 34-17. That game was never really close, and everyone was scared. Oh, Kyle Shanahan, doesn't matter who's on the field, they're going to scheme something up because he's the boogeyman, and he didn't. But yeah, I mean, think about that. They won 13 games last year and didn't play what we would call a complete game, really.
Right, and sadly they couldn't do that in the NFC title either, or not the NFC. You know what I mean? So
it felt like the NFC title game, but yeah.
Well, I will say though, I did ask AJ Dillon. I said, what game has really stuck out to you in your career? He mentioned the Titans game. So,
well, that was his. I think he had 100 yards in that game. I mean, that was one of those kinds of games. I think last year you could point to the Rams game. They played pretty well on both sides of the ball, but they busted 2 coverages in that game to give up touchdowns. They let the Rams sort of sneak kind of back into it late, even though that was never really a close game in the second half. That's probably the other, if I'm going to give 2 answers, that's probably the other answer. But yeah, it's one of those things. They seem to find a way every week. But when we think about the best versions of these Packers teams, like you remember the 2014 team, they went through a month stretch where they just looked unbeatable. And I don't think you can point to a stretch where they look unbeatable in any of these games. And I want to ask you about this because they play a banged up Bucs team this week. I think this is sort of just from a reputational standpoint, a must win of like, if Mike Evans isn't going to play and Chris Godwin, even if he plays, is going to be 75%, and Julio Jones is a game time decision every week now, and the offensive line is banged up. Like this is a game where you need to go out and show it. Do you think there is the capability of this team? We watched the Bills go off on Monday night. Like, do the Packers have it in them to win those sorts of games? I think we'll find one answer to that, or some answer to that on Sunday. Do you think it's in there?
It has to be. I do feel though, like, outside of the playoffs and the regular season, when you're talking about these marquee matchups, the Packers have shown up. I just think that they've played some really, really good football when they're playing those teams where it's, Tom Brady, et cetera, et cetera. I think they have shown
Joe Burrow,
up.
Pat Mahomes, Russell Wilson. Yeah.
Shown up for these big games. And when, they were playing the Chiefs, that was kind of a game where like they got to win, and they did. I think they show up, but I think what's going to be important was you knew in week 1 you have Justin Jefferson, you have Dalvin Cook. Stop those guys, you have a good chance of winning, right? They did not stop Justin Jefferson. If, Mike Evans, his appeal is he doesn't get the appeal, he's out, fine. Chris Godwin, if he plays, like you mentioned, won't be 100%. Stop him. Stop Leonard Fournette. You have those guys that you have to contain on the offense or on the defensive side of the ball. And if they can do that and get to Brady, that's a recipe for success. But it's more of, can they actually do that? Because again, it's Tom Brady always just seems to find a way to win, whether it's with his defense or not. So I think they have it in them. I think this can be a very big statement that they make, and people are going to say if Mike Evans isn't in there, Packers are, they should have won, blah, blah, blah. But again, you can only play who's on the field, and I think they show up on Sunday.
Well, they should win. I mean, that's my point is I think they should win if these guys, if this offense looks the way that it's looked, and the Bucs offense, I know they've played 2 pretty good defenses, but they just have looked kind of bad. And in ways that, like, I know that the aesthetics of the Packers offense have not been what we're used to. They're top 10 in DVOA. They're 2 in success rate. They're top half in EPA per dropback. Like, all the underlying numbers say that this offense is fine, like just fine. And all the underlying numbers for the Bucs say this offense is bad. Like, it's really a weird thing to be going into a game against Tom Brady and going, if we can just get to 20 points, I think, that's enough. But again, the defense has to step up here too. I said this earlier in the week, and I'm interested in your take on this theory. I said, okay, I came out of that game going, this is the most identity I can remember a Packers team having, where it is run the ball, it is make a couple plays on offense, it's rush the passer with 4, and it's play coverage in the back end. And it's not just Aaron and Devontae go make magic, where it's going to be a little different every week, but you just know they're going to figure, like, we know exactly what the blueprint is. We know exactly what the identity is in a way that I don't think we have in a while.
Yeah, and that's going to have to be the way it goes, especially with these rookie receivers, right? When you have A.J. Dillon, we have Aaron Jones, and they're able to move the offense, that gives those younger guys just, again, more time to develop. And, Aaron Jones even saying he needed that month when he first started to really kind of get the speed of the game down and just kind of get his bearings before he could really make an impact with his team. So I think having those tailbacks really just be the guys that run the offense and get this thing going is going to be really crucial. I think having an identity is very important, because in week 1, it was just super disjointed and we weren't really sure what we were seeing. It was kind of like, let's throw this against the wall, see if it works. Oh, it didn't. Oh, no. I think week 2, they established that identity, and that's going to be what they're going to be using moving forward. But on the same token, it's if that is their identity and teams know, okay, we just have to stop Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon, easier said than done. How do they get around that? And that's when they have to get those other guys really developed.
Well, it's going to be a fun week. Aaron Rodgers does not play well in Tampa. I kind of don't buy that as a thing. It's just coincidence. They've had some really good defenses. And then that one year back in 2009 was just bizarre. I think it's still the worst game I've ever seen Aaron Rodgers play in terms of throwing to the wrong team and just looking out of sorts. So hopefully that is not what we're talking about in a week's time, Lily. Until then, we will talk to you later.
Thanks, Peter.
All right. Thanks to Lily for joining us. Always amazing to talk to her. She is the best. Today's episode brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline.net is your number one source for all of your pro and college football betting needs and sports info this season. Week 2 didn't go quite as well for me as week 1. Not as well as I would have liked. I tried to get a little too cute, I have to be honest. Tried to get into some of these like win by between 1 and 6 when I didn't love the line. And I need to stick with the classics, I think, on some of these. BetOnline is your source for all of your sports wagering info, including live betting, esports, and more. They've got MLB, MMA, boxing, golf. The NBA is around the corner here. Head to the website or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends and the action. BetOnline, where the game starts. And thanks for making Locked On Packers your first listen every day. Now make your second listen the Locked On Peacock and Williamson NFL show. Brian Peacock and former NFL scout Matt Williamson give you the expert NFL analysis in less than 30 minutes. It's free and available wherever you get podcasts. I don't know why I'm doing this voice. We're going to be back tomorrow, crossover Thursday, and then our live show on Friday. Remember, 5:30 Eastern time, 4:30 Central time on Friday for our live stream, just because my schedule forces that to be so. I understand that probably means fewer people will be able to tune in. I'm hoping in a work from home paradigm that so I can still get some of you to come hang out and have happy hour with me. So hopefully we can do that. Follow me on Twitter, Peter_Bukowski. Follow the podcast on Twitter at Locked On Packers. Like us on Facebook. Subscribe to the podcast, iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts. Wherever you find podcasts, you will find Locked On Packers. And anytime you want to hit us up on the Locked On Packers fan hotline, you can do that, 920-341-3775 to stay Locked On Packers.